morning, sir.
Good morning.
Now, in conjunction with, Dr. Rentschler, is that correct?
Dr. Rentschler, yes.
So you, in conjunction with Dr.
Keep your voice up, Mr. Melanie.
Yes. You, in conjunction with Dr. Rentschler and Dr. Klein, wrote a report in regard to your analysis, correct?
Correct.
And, Doctor, that report was issued on February 12th, 2024, is that correct?
Correct.
And in the first paragraph of that report, the last two sentences, you or whoever the author of that particular portion indicates, this analysis is based on information currently available to ARCA and is only to be issued in its entirety. However, ARCA reserves the right to supplement or revise this report if additional information becomes available. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's pretty standard as far as your industry is concerned. You can only work with the information that you're provided. Is that correct?
Certainly.
Now, in this instance, you were provided 10 things, and then there were 4 additional things that either you or the other doctors had reviewed as far as literature or things of that nature. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
And the 10 things that you were talking about were reports, an initial crime scene report, medical examiner dispatch removal report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Photographs of the incident location. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how many sets of photographs of the incident location were you provided with?
In terms of the number of photographs?
Not the number of photographs, or were there different sets of photographs?
Yes.
And how many sets?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I know that there was a series that were taken during the daytime, as well as ones taken what appeared to be in the early morning hours.
And you were also provided video from the early morning hours. Is that correct?
From what I recall, I think it was daytime, but yes.
Photographs of the vehicle, photographs of recovered evidence. Is that correct?
Correct.
CDR report from the 2021 Lexus LX570. Correct?
Correct.
Autopsy report, autopsy photographs. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then some other things. Those would be the 10 things that you were provided with, and then there were 4 other things that you reviewed or part of your team reviewed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in regard to there's a section in your report called Review of Materials, and it talks about photographs and glass fragments and plastic fragments and things of that nature, correct?
Correct.
You also talk about a black drinking straw that was recovered on scene. Is that correct?
Correct.
However, there's no mention in the report about Mr. O'Keefe's shoe or Mr. O'Keefe's hat. Are you aware of those items as well?
Yes.
And are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe's shoe was actually found dug out from the snow, sort of flush with the curbing in front of the area where his body was found?
Yes.
Now, over the course of your work as a crash reconstructionist, and again, I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just curious. Typically, you're reconstructing or you're looking at someone else's reconstruction in relation to something that occurred in the past, correct?
Not.
There's a section in your report called Review of Materials, and it talks about photographs and glass fragments and plastic fragments and things of that nature, correct?
Correct.
You also talk about a black drinking straw that was recovered on scene. Is that correct?
Correct.
However, there's no mention in the report about Mr. O'Keefe's shoe or Mr. O'Keefe's hat. Are you aware of those items as well?
Yes.
And are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe's shoe was actually found dug out from the snow, sort of flush with the curbing in front of the area where his body was found?
Yes.
Now, over the course of your work as a crash reconstructionist, and again, I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just curious. Typically, you're reconstructing or you're looking at someone else's reconstruction in relation to something that occurred in the past, correct?
Shit, I really want to get that better.
You also talk about a black drinking straw that was recovered on scene. Is that correct?
Correct.
However, there's no mention in the report about Mr. O'Keefe's shoe or Mr. O'Keefe's hat. Are you aware of those items as well?
Yes.
And are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe's shoe was actually found dug out from the snow, sort of flush with the curbing in front of the area where his body was found?
Yes.
Now, over the course of your work as a crash reconstructionist, and again, I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just curious.
She's looking very concerned.
Typically, you're reconstructing or you're looking at someone else's reconstruction in relation to something that occurred in the past, correct?
Not always, no.
Well, my question is, sir, how many times have you actually been on like a live scene where the vehicles are still in place at final rest, where there are bodies in place at final rest? Have you ever been to the scene where those sort of conditions existed?
Certainly. We have a rapid response team that essentially we've been on site on the day of or the week of the incident, yes.
Now, how often is that?
Not nearly as often as, like I said earlier, we primarily do litigation work. So again, by the time we're retained, obviously the scene has been is no longer present.
The scene's been cleared, items have been removed as far as evidence or other things. That's mostly what you deal with, correct?
Sure.
And as far as the hat that we were talking about before, is are you aware that was recovered as well? Same day as the drinking straw, February 3rd, in the area where the body of Mr. O'Keefe was discovered?
In the area of the front yard, yes.
Now, you have some familiarity through working as a crash reconstructionist with pedestrian collisions, correct?
Correct.
Is it common or uncommon for in the course of a pedestrian collision, for a shoe or glasses or a hat or something to fall off of that pedestrian in the collision sequence near where the area of impact occurs?
Well, I think that depends on the interaction between the two. If we're talking, if it's more of a side swipe type interaction, if we're just talking about an arm, for instance.
Come the fuck on. You are so full of shit. It's disgusting. You're pandering. Disgusting.
contact the vehicle, no, I would not expect the shoe to come off. If it's something where the entire body is interacting with the vehicle, then yes, there's a greater likelihood that something like a shoe will come off, yes.
So that is consistent in general terms with the pedestrian collision of the shoe coming off, correct?
Again, based on the interaction between the
He really wants to not answer this question.
two. I wouldn't say it's a blanket statement that, again, in all pedestrian interactions, you will have a shoe come off.
That's not the question I was asking. So what I'm asking is it generally consistent with pedestrian collisions?
Is it consistent or not consistent? It is consistent, sir.
Shoe may come off during the collision sequence near the area of impact.
Shoes can come off in a pedestrian impact, yes.
Thank you. Was it that hard?
Now, again, you were testifying earlier about the damage to the Lexus being isolated in the area of the taillight, correct?
Correct.
And that was based on the information that you were providing, correct?
Correct.
Now, with respect to any of the materials that you were provided, was there anything in the materials that you were provided that indicated that just the arm or outstretched arm of Mr. O'Keefe interacted with the vehicle?
No.
And based on your review of any of the materials that you were provided, was there any information stating that Mr. O'Keefe had been struck in the back of the head by the taillight assembly?
No.
And